7 Spine-chilling vacation tales, discover the sinister secrets of haunted destinations abroad. The Johnson family from Ohio had always dreamed of a getaway. Mark, a diligent accountant, and Sarah, a devoted school teacher, finally carved out time to escape the mundane and chase the alluring charm of a quaint village in the south of France. As soon as they arrived, the picturesque scene painted by adorable cottages and cobblestone paths filled them with joy. That joy, however, quickly morphed into anxiety when they began to notice unsettling glances from the locals. Each pair of eyes lingered on the little girls, Lily and Emma, as if measuring their worth, their very existence. Conversations would abruptly halt, replaced by conspiring whispers as the Johnsons wandered through the village. At first, Mark brushed off their behavior. "Just curious villagers," he said, giving Sarah a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But as they explored, Sarah felt something shift in the air, a sinister undercurrent threading through laughter and warmth. She felt it seep into her bones, a chill she couldn't shake. The Airbnb host who had welcomed them with an all-too-warm smile had vanished shortly after their arrival, leaving them unsettled but choosing to deem it an oddity of vacation drama. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky blushed with twilight, they visited a local market buzzing with life. But the laughter felt strained, and fear drummed in the background. Sarah caught snippets of whispered conversations, phrases like witchcraft twisted her insides. "Mark," she whispered, gripping his arm, "did you hear that?" He laughed it off again, pulling the girls close, but it did little to calm her racing heart. The villagers' odd actions cast a long shadow over the quaint beauty, replacing the love for France with a lurking dread. That dread morphed into terror when Emma vanished during a meticulously planned outing in a sun-drenched meadow. Panic rippled through Sarah and Mark as they frantically shouted their daughter's name, the air around them thickening with eeriness. Silence was the only answer, echoing through the beautiful landscape, twisting the familiar into a nightmare. Desperate, they barreled through the village, a labyrinth of secrets and long-held folklore whispered beneath deliberate breaths. Their search led them to unsettling tales of children lost to the village, sacrificed to ethereal forces to appease a dark hunger. As Mark gripped Sarah's hand, they stumbled upon a villager, his gaze grave, a smile that felt more like a grimace. "They take children sometimes," he warned ominously. "Balance must be maintained." This was no ordinary vacation, there was a deadly game afoot, designed to trap unwitting families lured by the village's charm. Just then, the sun dipped low, shadows lengthening and melding into sinister silhouettes around them. Sarah and Mark felt the weight of 1,000 hushed warnings pressing upon them. As they neared an ancient chapel, rumored to hold the village's dark secrets, the air turned electric with fear. Laughter rang out nearby, a scraggly, cruel sound that sent chills straight to their bones. Questions flooded their minds: would they ever find Emma? Were they becoming prey in a twisted story they had unintentionally become part of? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as their determination wavered, a figure flickered in their vision, familiar just a flash, but enough to make their hearts pound against their ribcage. The laughter grew louder, more boisterous, wrapping around them like a constricting snake. Fear battered their hearts as the realization dawned, a terrible understanding of this idyllic village's secret. The charm was but a mask for a sinister truth. Would they unearth Emma before becoming sacrificial offerings themselves? The door to danger stood ajar, shadows whispering the deepest horrors yet to come. The echo of laughter danced around Sarah like fingers tracing her spine, tightening her throat with fear. Shadows lengthened, creeping toward them as if drawn by the very panic radiating from their bodies. "Did you see her?" Mark whispered, his voice cracking. "I swear for a moment, I thought I saw Emma. The shapes of villagers blurred into a sinister congregation, lurking and whispering. They stood close enough for Sarah to catch fragments of their conversation. Words like sacrifice and nightfall knotted her stomach. Panic surged again. We have to go. We need to find her now, she urged, gripping Mark's arm tightly. Mark nodded, but his face was pale, a mask of doubt. As they turned to retrace their steps, instinctively seeking the place where they had last seen their daughter, a chilling wind swept through the square, sending leaves spiraling into the air. The villagers stepped back, their faces momentarily lost in the shadows. For just a second, the laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence that felt alive. What is happening? Sarah pleaded, her heart pounding in her ears. Sarah, look. Mark pointed toward the chapel, its stone facade glowing under the light of the full moon. A faint light flickered from inside, illuminating the faces surrounding it. It beckoned them, horrifying yet mesmerizing. The villagers swayed, their murmurs merging into a low chant, each word creeping through Sarah's mind like venom. Stay close, Mark instructed, shielding Sarah and Lily from the encroaching dread. Together they hurried toward the chapel, each footstep echoing in the chilling night. With every step, memories of Emma twisted in Sarah's mind. Inside the chapel, the air grew thick and alive, vibrating with an energy that turned her stomach. Shadows danced on the walls, moving like they were alive, yet the room was empty. Dust motes floated in the moonlit beams, creating an ethereal scene like something out of a dream. Emma. Mark's voice pierced the silence, echoing back to them like a death knell. There was no response, only the pulsing beat of fear. Then they saw it, a glimmer amidst the darkness. A small object, perhaps something of Emma's. Mark rushed to it, and Sarah followed, her heart racing. It was a tiny hairclip, one adorned with colorful butterflies, glinting ominously on the dusty floor. Where is she? Sarah gasped, her voice shaky, panic clawing at her throat. Mark's eyes widened, fear seizing him as they both realized this was a sign Emma had been here. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, sealing them inside the chapel. The villagers' chant grew louder, invading their senses, swelling the sound, twisting into a menacing crescendo. The shadows closed in, darkness pooling around them as flickering candlelight wavered. Balance must be maintained, a voice echoed, reverberating through the chapel, blending with the chants. It was the villager from before, his eyes glinting with something unearthly behind the door. As Sarah's mind raced, the realization struck. The villagers wanted something new, someone to flow into their ancient cycle, a piece to make their rituals complete. Run! Mark yelled, but the shadowy figures began to form, blocking their escape, chanting louder. Panic surged, and they turned, searching for another route, but the oppressive energy pinned them to the ground. The air crackled with malevolence as dread engulfed them. They had to free themselves to run back into the night where hope and terror collided. But the images of Emma, lost and calling for help, burned in their minds, pulling them down a path of no return. Sarah felt her breath quickening as a deep voice broke through the chanting, promising salvation with a price. Give us what we seek, and the balance will be restored. What would she sacrifice to find her daughter? Would it be worth the price of lost innocence? As darkness encroached, the choice loomed larger, and she stood at the edge of despair. Mark, we can't, she whispered as the shadows loomed larger. But it was too late. The ground shifted beneath them, a sudden tremor, shaking the very foundation of the chapel as candles flickered wildly. And then came the scream. It pierced the night, filled with agony and fear. It belonged to Emma. The voices swelled, drowning everything in a sea of madness. Sarah's heart sank. Her worst fears had manifested, but the question loomed, would they find their way back to their daughter or become part of the tapestry of despair forever? As the shadows enveloped them, a final thought broke through. It felt like a secret only unveiled in the dark. Would they survive to tell the tale, or was the village hungry for new souls? The ground shuddered once more, and Sarah's heart raced. It was as if the chapel itself was alive and aware, pulsing with a sinister rhythm. The flickering candles cast long, twisting shadows that seemed to reach for her, promising nothing but despair. "Emma!" Mark cried again, desperation cracking his voice. They stood frozen, trapped between the chilling chant of the villagers and the growing darkness that pressed in on them. Each echo of his voice felt futile, like shoving against the tide. Then suddenly, the shadows parted for a moment, revealing a path toward the altar. It beckoned to them, adorned with sinister symbols carved into the stone. A wave of dread washed over Sarah. "Are we supposed to go there?" Maybe it will give us answers," Mark stammered, though his gaze was drawn toward the looming darkness, fear flickering in his eyes. Together, they stepped cautiously toward the altar, the chanting intensifying, wrapping around them like chains. With every step, the chants morphed into agonizing screams, fragmented sounds of their tortured emotions. "Help us. Find her. We are lost." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, mingling with the cold sweat clinging to her skin. How could they possibly be lost in a place so familiar yet so foreign? As they approached the altar, Sarah spotted something lying in front of it, a faded photograph. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Emma, beaming, mirror-bright, caught in that moment of innocence. "It's her." She lunged for it, trembling fingers grasping the paper, but just as quickly, a cold wind swirled around them, forcing her to drop it. "No!" she shouted, her voice barely making it above the chaos. Shadows spiraled like a tempest around them, and she felt a suffocating weight closing in. The villagers' faces twisted in fury, their chants morphing into a dreadful harmony. "Balance must be restored. Offer the child. Not Emma. We won't give her up." Mark screamed, but their pleas were swallowed by a deafening roar. Behind them, the door trembled, as if waiting for an uninvited guest. The shadows thickened, and Sarah felt as if she was sinking into the very ground. They were closing in, a sea of darkness ready to consume them whole. In a moment of maddening clarity, Sarah spun around, facing the encroaching doom. "We won't let you take her." With fury unlike any she had felt before, she grabbed the hairclip she had found earlier and hurled it at the altar, her voice breaking free. "You want something, a sacrifice? Then take me instead." The moment the clip struck the altar, silence enveloped the chapel, thick and oppressive. The shadows halted, crashing into each other like waves against rocks, uncertain and restless. Mark looked at her, fear and disbelief in his eyes. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "I'm trying to save her," she cried, heart racing with wild desperation. An unsettling calm swept over them, but it was heavy with uncertainty. A low voice broke through the stillness, promising and sinister. "Your choice fuels the darkness. Is your love truly so strong?" Panic crept back in. What had she done? The villagers turned their hollowed eyes toward her, anticipation crackling in the air. Beside her, Mark grasped her shoulder with trembling hands. "We can figure something else out, we don't have to do this." But the ceiling above them began to thrum, vibrating with an ancient power. The ground shifted again, and Sarah could feel the weight of her decision pressing down upon her. "Say yes, and balance will be restored." The voice lured them deeper, a whisper promising salvation but revealing nothing. Her soul felt torn in two, love for her child clashed against the instinct for survival. "Sarah, we need to decide now." Mark's voice cracked, but the altar stood like a gargoyle, unmoving, waiting. And then came a horrific realization. What if surrendering herself was the only way to truly save Emma? The unseen forces grew more demanding, the shadows thickening again, ready to swallow them whole. "Choose." The voice urged, powerful and persuasive, echoing in her mind. As the altar pulsed ominously, Sarah's vision narrowed, and in that moment of despair, she saw only two paths, one leading to darkness and one to light. But what if the light held an even darker truth? Caught in a void of fear, Sarah braced herself for the consequences of her choice, the echoes of the villagers' chants transforming into a chilling lullaby. what had she unleashed, and could they escape the grip of darkness before it was too late? A breeze swept through the chapel, carrying with it an icy caress that seemed to siphon the warmth from Sarah's body. The shadows pulsed and trembled, coiling like serpents around her legs. She could feel Mark's grip tightening, fear flaring in his eyes as the altar throbbed with an almost hungry anticipation. "What are you going to do?" he implored, his voice barely above a whisper. Each syllable echoed ominously, the tension hanging heavy between them. "I don't know," she rasped, heart pounding like a drum as she fought to think straight. "But we can't let them take Emma." The voice from the shadows lingered, seductive and dark. "Your love for the child, it can become a powerful force, if you feed it." Each word slid through the air, wrapping around them like a noose. Mark's eyes darted to the altar, then back to her. "We need to find a way to fight this. There must be something wrong with your sweet little love story." The voice interrupted, crawling under her skin. "You seek to play heroes in a place designed for sacrifice." As if on cue, the villagers surged forward, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. Their faces twisted with longing, faces that were once familiar now marred by an insatiable hunger. "Offer the child or join her," they intoned, a grotesque choir igniting the chapel with dread. Suddenly, Sarah thought she saw Emma's face in the crowd, a mirage born from desperation. "Emma," she cried, panic rising in her throat. The image flickered, replaced by a dark silhouette that sent a shiver deep into her bones. It wasn't her daughter. It was something else, something insatiable. The ground shivered beneath her feet, and the altar let out a mournful groan as if responding to her fears. "Choose." The voice insisted, demanding, relentless. Mark shook his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't seriously consider this sacrificing yourself?" "I don't want to lose her." The words tumbled from Sarah's lips, the reality of the situation crashing down upon her. The villagers' chants intertwined with her racing panic. What if this is the only way to save her? "No!" Mark yelled, yanking her back. "There has to be another way, anything but this." "Do you still trust me?" she asked, her tone desperate but steady. In his eyes, she saw a flicker of hope battling against the encroaching darkness. He nodded reluctantly. "Then help me find a way to break this cycle," Sarah urged, feeling the tides of darkness pressing harder against her. Together, they turned towards the altar, its carved symbols glinting dimly in the candlelight. Something deep inside her was awakening, a primal force she barely recognized. The low hum of the incantation grew louder, drowning out her thoughts as she focused on the symbols. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing to a set of markings that seemed different from the rest. Ancient runes, she had seen them before in her research. They look like a way to disrupt the ritual. Mark's eyes widened, and he shook his head, stepping closer. "What if we're wrong? What if it makes things worse? Or maybe it's the only right choice we have left," she answered, determination hardening her resolve. They needed to disrupt this dark awakening before it consumed everything and everyone they held dear. As they edged closer, the chanting intensified, a discordant cacophony rising to a fever pitch that threatened to shatter their sanity. The shadows clawed at them, howling with rage and frustration. Balance must be restored. They screeched. Sarah felt adrenaline coursing through her veins like fire. She reached for the hidden rune, her fingers brushing the cold stone, sparking an ancient magic. A blinding light erupted as she chanted the words she could barely remember, every syllable twisting the shadows into chaotic spools of darkness. But then the walls of the chapel trembled, and that calm promise from before broke through the frenzy. "You invite destruction with every word you speak." As the energy surged around them, she realized with dread that the altar was alive, pulsating in rhythm with every heartbeat. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice lost against the monstrous roar of the villagers as they lunged forward. The light enveloped them, yet the darkness wouldn't yield easily. Would the power of love triumph, or was it merely the calm before a deeper storm? She was poised on the edge of the abyss, and the unknown was waiting to greet her. Could they break the cycle, or would they become part of the nightmare? The light from Sarah's chant flared, illuminating the faces twisted by hunger. It was a reveal both sickening and surreal. Mark shielded his eyes, his breath hitched as shadows flickered and writhed, merging with the villagers. They seemed to transform, their humanity slipping like water through clenched fingers, revealing something primal, something ancient lurking just beneath the surface. "Sarah. We have to," he began, his voice lost in the swell of darkness. The altar groaned again, its stones grinding like teeth in anguish. "Feed the will, and salvation could be yours," the voice coiled around them, dripping with promises sweeter than poison. Sarah felt the weight of its temptation, heavy and suffocating. The villagers surged forward. A few stepped into the light, their features illuminated in grotesque clarity. Faces she once knew melded together, distorted like a funhouse mirror. Friends, neighbors, their eyes were glossed over, void of recognition. All that remained was that ravenous hunger, an echo of the mundane now turned monstrous. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, flailing in panic. Her heart thundered as the fear surged like icy claws gripping her soul. Where was her daughter? What horrors awaited her? "Hold on!" Mark shouted, pushing forward, grabbing her by the arm. "Together!" He pulled closer, fear etched into every line of his face, but determination blazed in his eyes. The light pulsing from the rune beckoned like hope in the darkness. "We can't let them take you." Mark's voice was a flicker of warmth in the encroaching frost, yet behind it lurked the dread of desperation. The grinding of the altar intensified, vibrating through the floorboards, rattling Sarah's bones. "The offering! It must be made!" The villagers roared as one, their voices merging into an anguished howl that set teeth on edge. It felt like a warning and a command, a promise wrapped in terror. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, swallowing bile. "I want to let them have her." The words spilled from her desperate heart, mingling with ancient magic. She opened her eyes and faced the altar, daring to hope that the runes would show her the path. As she chanted, the symbol beneath her fingers glowed, pulsating with energy. Bright tendrils of power expanded, pushing against the shadows like a shield. The villagers cringed, gasping at the light, their forms twisting away. For a moment, just a moment, she thought they might break free, but then she felt the pull of their words. "You will embrace the shadows, and they will embrace you." Mark's voice broke through her daze. "Sarah, you have to control it. Focus." The whispers were promises of strength, of power, but they came coated in darkness. The cold seeped in again, like ice creeping up from her feet. She resisted, summoning everything she had left. "No!" she cried. "I reject this." The villagers screamed in protest, voices rising to a maelstrom, a storm of agony and despair. "You cannot escape. The cycle must continue." They wailed, a cacophony of grief and anger that struck her like a blow. Suddenly, the altar erupted, the stone fracturing as a wave of dark energy crashed against her, sending her staggering back. The light flickered, waning in the face of the onslaught. Mark lunged, catching her just before she fell. Together, they stood, trembling against the force of the villagers' hatred. "Fight, Sarah. We're almost there," he urged, urgency coating his words, desperation burning in his gaze. Just as Sarah felt the thread of hope fraying, a chilling voice emerged from the void. "You think you can walk away? You will pay the price. All will suffer." With a final surge of determination fueled by love, she raised her arms, palms pressed against the energy swirling around them. "No more sacrifices. We fight together." The altar splintered under the power of her declaration, cracking like thunder as the shadows screamed in unison. But in that moment of defiance, something shifted. A tremor ran through the chapel, cracking the very foundation they stood upon. What would rise from the ashes of their defiance? Would the darkness consume them, or was there truly a path to salvation lurking behind the veil of despair? As the very air thickened with dread, Sarah and Mark braced for the aftermath, not knowing if they'd be swept away in destruction or emerge from the abyss. A chilling silence fell, heavy as the looming shadows, waiting watching. What awaited them in the depths of darkness? The silence shattered with cracks and groans, the altar trembling like a creature awakened from slumber. Shadows slithered across the walls, twisting into nightmarish shapes that danced with malicious intent. Sarah's heart raced as the weight of uncertainty pressed against her like an unseen hand. The villagers, now more ghoul than human, advanced, their faces a swirling mass of torment and rage that sent chills racing down her spine. "Mark!" She gasped as an icy gust swept through the chapel, carrying with it the stench of decay. The villagers closed in, their breath like wind from a crypt, and the light pulsing from the rune flickered, fighting to hold its ground. "We have to do this. Together!" Mark shouted, but even his voice wavered, barely corresponding with the quickening heartbeat in her ears. The altar roared again, resonating like thunder. "You cannot change what is destined." It bellowed, the darkness swirling into new forms as they pressed forward, desperation sharpening their movements. The promise of salvation fading, Sarah felt anguish welling inside her. Emma. The name clawed at her throat, raw and aching. Where was her daughter? As if summoned by her thoughts, a figure weaved through the shadows. A child's silhouette flickered, just at the edge of the light. "Emma. Mom. Emma." Sarah shouted, bursting into motion, a primal instinct roaring to life. But the villagers surged again, blocking her path. Each face once familiar had twisted into an endless abyss of hunger. They reached out, skeletal hands grasping through the light. "They'll take you too." Mark shouted, desperation snatching at every word. The shadows pulsed, loud whispers curling around her mind. "Join us! Join us!" The terrible symphony of voices tugged at her sanity, enveloping her in darkness. "No!" Sarah shrieked, the raw panic spilling out in a desperate burst. "You won't take my family." Gritting her teeth, she focused on the rune, her heart thrumming in time with its pulse. She felt that spark of energy, and in a moment of clarity, she understood. "Mark. The light. It can banish this." But just as hope flickered, the ground trembled violently, cracking open a chasm that threatened to swallow them whole. Sarah stumbled, teetering on the edge as tendrils of smoke coiled around her legs, pulling her down. "Grab my hand!" Mark yelled, lunging forward. She reached out, their fingers barely brushing the skin as the darkness roared louder, a hurricane of despair that seemed to cackle at their vulnerability. She felt the chill of the shadows seep into her bones. "No!" The word burst forth as she wrestled with his outstretched hand, panic clawing at her heart. The villagers were within inches now, their mouths twisted into grotesque grins, eyes glinting with a fire that spoke of hunger far beyond flesh, an insatiable yearning for more than simply a meal. "Embrace the darkness!" They wailed in perfect unison, filling the air with a palpable dread. Amidst the chaos, Sarah's breath hitched as an idea sparked in her mind. The runes. Could they be the weapon? She pressed her palms against the glowing symbols. Together. Focus the energy outwards. Mark nodded, determination igniting his eyes again. They both stretched their arms wide. A wave of light flared brightly, pushing against the dark mass surrounding them. The villagers shuddered, their silent screams echoing, pulled away as if battling against a mighty current, but something shifted. The darkness quivered, coiling like a serpent ready to strike. "You think your light can save you? The price is already written in blood." A new figure appeared, a figure draped in shadows, towering and menacing. "The price must be paid." It hissed, the air thick with its putrid breath. Time slowed to a crawl as fear crashed over Sarah like a wave. They had to fight, yes, but at what cost? Was there even a chance of escape when fate waited with bated breath? Would the light be enough against the ever-looming tide of despair? Or was the only way forward fraught with sacrifice? The shadows darted, hungry and eager, and in that moment of blinding terror, Sarah grasped Mark's hand tightly in resolve. But would love be enough to shield them from their shared doom? As the altar trembled ominously and the darkness writhed, Sarah braced for the inevitable confrontation, but one question lingered: who would pay the price? The light surged, a desperate beacon in the thickening gloom, fiercely pushing back against the encroaching shadows. But Sarah could feel it waning. The villagers, their faces, once neighbors, now twisted masks of torment, taunted her with ghoulish laughter, a sound that wrapped around her thoughts like barbed wire. Their hunger was palpable, a living thing that clawed at her mind. "We won't let them take you, Emma," Sarah shouted, her heart pounding, a drum of defiance against the nightmarish reality closing in. But doubt crept in like a snake. What if the light failed? What if sacrifice was the only way to free her from this hell? She could already feel its cold grip tightening around her soul. Mark's grip on her hand was faltering. "Hold on. Keep pushing," he cried, but his voice wavered. Shadows lunged closer, their skeletal arms stretching towards them. Despite the light, fear shadowed his eyes, a reflection of her own growing despair. "Help me!" the voice screamed from the depths of darkness. A figure writhed and twisted in the shadows, pleading and menacing all at once. "I can save you. I can give Emma back." Sarah's breath hitched. "Emma!" she cried out, scanning the crowd of writhing bodies. Her heart constricted as a pang of guilt washed over her. "No. I won't trade one life for another." But the specter lingered, tantalizingly close. "You must choose," it hissed, the shadows coiling tighter around her legs. "Join the darkness, or lose everything." The altar responded to her turmoil, the runes flashing violently as if they too felt the surge of despair. "You think you are strong enough to fight fate?" it thundered, its voice vibrating through the chapel like a death knell, with a child's scream echoing in her ears. Sarah channeled her fear into rage, pushing against the light. "Mark. Just a little longer." Tears streamed down her cheeks, a mixture of grief and resolve. She had to believe the light would hold, but the walls were alive now, oozing darkness like sweat. The ground shook, sending a tremor through Sarah's body. "You'll all perish," the altar screeched. The villagers surged forward, a tide of madness and rot, clashing against the light they emitted. Amidst the chaos, Sarah's vision blurred. Her focus slipped, and the light flickered uncertainly. The villagers' chants grew louder, drowning out reason, a cacophony of anguish. "Embrace us. Embrace death." "No." Sarah's voice rang out, a desperate cry against the encroaching tide. She felt Mark's grip slip as he staggered backward, fear manifesting on his face. The world tilted, everything darkened, an all-consuming void. "You think hope can save you?" The chilling voice coiled around her, icy fingers pulling her deeper into despair. "Hope is the cruelest lie of all." In a moment of wild determination, Sarah's hand flew to her heart. "I will find you, Emma. I will find you," she whispered fiercely, channeling every ounce of her love into the rune. Brightness erupted like a star-going supernova, forcing back the shadows. But under the light's brilliance, a new horror emerged, a face unfurling from the darkness, a visage of her daughter. Her eyes were vacant, deep wells of despair, and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. "Mom! Help me!" Time stretched, and the light faltered once more. "The choice is yours. What will you sacrifice?" They were upon her: love, despair, sacrifice, the altar's voice now mocking her resolve, whispering secrets meant to rot the soul. Sarah felt it in her bones, darkness hungered, and as her light flickered like a dying star, she faced a terrible reality. Would she lose Emma forever? Would their love be the ultimate price to pay? The final moment approached, shadows closing in, challenging her very essence. As dread washed over her, the altar rumbled ominously, and the shadows screeched in a unified roar. One thought echoed as the darkness pressed in: how much was she willing to sacrifice to bring her daughter back? The light burst forth like the last breath of a dying star, but its brilliance quivered, casting eerie shadows that rippled across the walls. Sarah's heart thundered, drowning out the cacophony of madness around her. Emma! She screamed again, but the name felt hollow against the growing storm of despair that a cold wind swept through the chapel as if the darkness itself exhaled. The hollow eyes of the villagers bored into her, their mouths twisted into grotesque grins. "Join us, Sarah!" they chanted, a chorus that intensified with desperation. "Give us your light. How can you ask this of me?" she cried, her voice breaking. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "What if they promised the impossible?" Mark stumbled forward, panic etched on his face. "Sarah, please. We can't give in. You can't let them take her." But the words faded as if swallowed by the darkness encroaching at the edges of her vision. The altar throbbed with an unholy pulse, the rumbling voice taunted her. "You are too late. The shadows are patient, and they will reclaim what is theirs." As its words reverberated in her mind, Sarah felt the tendrils of darkness reaching for her soul, and a chill crawled up her spine. Emma's face loomed larger in her mind, the vacant stare cutting through the fog of terror. "Mom! Save me!" The silent scream echoed. How could she save her daughter when she could barely hold on to her own sanity? "Focus, Sarah!" Mark shouted, his voice a lifeline in the surging storm. "You have to fight. We will find a way." His belief ignited something within her, a flicker of hope struggling for survival. The shadows hissed, recoiling momentarily from the light she gathered within herself. Every ounce of love she felt for Emma surged through her veins. "I will bring you back," she roared, drawing the light tightly around her. But doubt invaded her resolve. What was the cost of resurrection? The altar vibrated with laughter, the villagers' faces morphing into a grotesque parody of humanity. "Surrender to us, Sarah. We can help you, but first, you must offer your heart." The specter shrieked, writhing along the edges of light. The air grew thick with an overwhelming sense of inevitability. Just then, the walls pulsated, emitting a low growl as tendrils of darkness reached out, curling around her legs, pulling her down into the depths. "No!" she gasped, summoning every ounce of strength. "I won't give in." The light seared against the shadows, illuminating faces twisted with anguish and longing, a desperate, dark hunger for her sacrifice. A voice seeped into her mind, smooth like oil yet razor sharp. "Consider your daughter, Sarah. What wouldn't you do for her? Wouldn't you sacrifice anything? Yourself?" The scream of the villagers morphed into a symphony of torment. "Join us!" they howled. Sarah felt their pain claw inside her, raw and infectious, threatening to embed itself deep within her heart. With a shuddering breath, Sarah shook her head violently. "No. I will find another way." She could see Emma still lost but not forgotten. The shadows howled in frustration, their grips tightening, desperate as the light wavered once more. In that instant, Sarah realized there was more than just one choice laid out before her. The altar's sinister glow pulsed, casting a choice that seemed clear, yet tainted with darkness. She couldn't save Emma solely with light. Would she dare to dive into shadow to save her? The altar's voice thundered, "You hesitate, child. Discover the true depth of your love or watch everything slip away." Dark shadows shimmered, beckoning her to plunge into a pit of unfathomable choices. Gathering what felt like the last of her will, Sarah felt a shiver of both fear and resolve. "If it's a choice between light and dark, I'll choose both," she declared firmly. As the shadows converged once more, a piercing scream rose from the altar, "Then let it be your undoing." The ground trembled, the air thickened. A storm was brewing. Her heart raced. What awaited her on this treacherous path would reshape everything she knew. And as the shadows clashed violently against the flickering light, a new horror seeped through the cracks. Would she emerge as savior or the greatest sinner of all? The altar pulsed angrily, and for a moment, everything went silent, the villagers frozen in place, their hungry smiles faltering. A sharp crack of thunder reverberated overhead, shaking the very foundation of the chapel. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing her desperation and resolve. "Do it!" cried Mark, his voice strained yet fierce. "Whatever it takes." The shadows writhed, swirling around her feet like venomous serpents. The air turned thick and stale, and an ancient bitterness clung to her skin, making every breath a battle. Sarah clenched her fists, summoning the last remnants of her love for Emma. "I won't let you win," she shouted defiantly, channeling every ounce of light and darkness swirling within her. As she stood before the altar, she felt the weight of the villagers' gazes upon her. Each one longed for her essence, craving her light like a moth attracted to the flame. If she took what they offered, would she become like them? A husk of the person she once was. The altar vibrated with dark energy, the voice now a whisper that coiled around her thoughts. "Join us, Sarah. You can suffer no longer. The shadows will cradle you. Rest with us forever." Distracted by the siren call, Sarah faltered, visions of Emma flashing through her mind. Her daughter's laughter, her bright smile, it made Sarah's resolve flicker like a candle in the wind. Could she really slip into the eternal embrace of darkness to save her? Or would it mean losing everything, including herself? "No. I'll take both," she roared, pushing back against the shadows pressing in around her, each tendril a reminder of everything that threatened to consume her. With a sudden rush, she dove into the shimmering darkness, grasping at the light that coiled inside her. The moment she touched the blackened depths, a chill like nothing she'd ever known sapped her strength. It felt alive, pulsing with sorrow, grief, pain, her own pain. The floor of the chapel rippled beneath her feet, revealing glimpses of a world entangled in sorrow. Each perspective felt like splintered glass, beautiful yet terrifying, a cacophony of souls trapped between realms, each whispering a fate worse than death. But at the heart of the storm, she clenched her fists tighter, feeling her love for Emma flickering defiantly amidst the chaos. "Sarah." It was Emma's voice, clearer now, brighter than the gilded haze of the chapel. "Help me." A jolt shot through her, and Sarah gasped as the shadows momentarily recoiled, revealing a pathway cloaked in simmering light. It strung between the villagers and the altar, a bridge of hope amid despair. Sarah dived toward it, but the shadows swirled again, angry and relentless, pulling her back. "Come back." The villagers moaned, their eyes pleading. "You belong to us. You'll never escape." Fear gripped her heart, but Mark lunged forward, his hand outstretched. "You can do it, Sarah. I believe in you." His fierce gaze met hers, anchoring her in their shared purpose, a beacon in the overwhelming darkness. "Emma!" she screamed, feeling her daughter's presence pulse through her. "Hold on. I'm coming." The shadows shrieked, clawing at her legs, pulling her toward the altar's cold embrace. Sarah could feel herself teetering on the edge of oblivion, but she focused on Emma. The love she felt engulfed her like a fiery shield. "No. I refuse to give in." With a guttural scream, Sarah surged forward into bright light, colliding with the encroaching darkness. The shadows twisted and writhed as they met the heat of her fierce determination, screeching with fury. Suddenly, the connection snapped. Sarah fell, tumbling through blissful white light, and amid the chaos, she heard a new sound, a child's sob. "Mom?" The world around her fell silent. Sarah's heart sank, an avalanche of dread washing over her. Had she finally reached Emma, or had she stepped into a nightmare far worse than the one she had just escaped? With each beat, the room darkened, plunging into an abyss where her daughter's voice echoed, growing fainter. "Where are you?" Sarah's voice trembled as shadows loomed on the edges of the light. The altar erupted with laughter, its voice booming again. "You thought you could resist? Your true sacrifice is yet to come." Shivers ran down her spine. Would Emma even recognize her now? The piercing question hung heavy in the air as the light flickered dangerously low, pregnant with uncertainty. And then, the haunting whisper reached her, chilling her to the bone. Choose or lose. In a world now teetering on the brink between salvation and ruin, one thing remained clear: the shadows were near, and with them, an unimaginable choice lay ahead. What would she sacrifice next to save her daughter? The shadows stirred, their ghastly forms twisting in the darkness, unfurling like black petals around Sarah. She felt the weight of their hunger, pressing down like a vice on her chest. Emma! She screamed again, chasing the echoes of her daughter's voice, the only lifeline in a sea of despair. Then, like a beacon cutting through fog, the light flared back to life. From behind the altar, a shimmering figure emerged. Emma. But her daughter's eyes were sunken, filled with an unsettling emptiness that pierced Sarah's heart. Mom? Help me, she pleaded, her voice fragile, yearning. No. Desperation clawed at Sarah, but something deeper than fear marked her. I'm coming for you. Mark surged alongside her, eyes wide with defiance. Together. Focus on love. We can do this. The villagers swarmed closer, their faces contorted in rage, the hunger for Sarah's spirit palpable. Join us. They shrieked, their voices growing shrill, piercing through the dim walls like arrows of despair. It felt like a tide crashing in, relentless and suffocating. Emma, just hold on. Sarah shouted, her own voice a fragile thread snatched into the storm. As the tension tightened, Mark squeezed Sarah's hand, a grounding anchor amid the chaos swirling around them. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Together. At that moment, they both lunged toward the light radiating from the altar. The shadows recoiled as they dove through, seeking to break the spell of hunger that threatened to consume them. Give us your light. The villagers roared again, but their chants turned to screams as Sarah and Mark surged forward, electric energy spiraling around them. As they breached the altar's light, images of Emma filled Sarah's mind. Each fleeting memory was a jolt of warmth: Lily's laughter, Emma's hugs, sunny afternoons that felt eternal. Those moments fueled a fire in her heart, warmth defying the choking cold. The shadows writhed and screamed, shrinking back as the wave of light pulsed from Sarah and Mark's combined resolve. In a surge of intensity, Sarah took a step forward. You want to feed on my love? I will not let it go. Suddenly, a crack ran through the chapel's ceiling. You will render yourself powerless. The altar screeched, but the light doubled. Mark's resolve shimmered beside her, a force that felt alive. You're wrong. Our love makes us strong. Together, they reached out with their collective hope, fearless, unwavering. They cast their brilliant light toward the shadowy faces, and it felt like pouring fresh water onto cracked soil. Let her go. She doesn't belong to you. Emma's faint form shimmered under the brightness, clarity piercing through the fog. Mom. I'm here. That was it. With one last push, they concentrated deeply, pouring their love and will into the light, surrounding Emma. The fierce glow gushed forward, illuminating the twisted faces of the villagers, peeling back their phantom-like coverings. For a moment, they seemed human again. No! They shrieked, claws grasping at nothing as the light broke their hold, severing the ties that bound them to the shadow realm. The walls cracked, trembled, and soon began to crumble. With a final screech, the villagers dissolved into shadows, swirling helplessly as the altar splintered and fell. You cannot deny us forever. Echoed the haunting voice, but Sarah's spirit surged, filled with hope and fierce love. Watch me. She shouted defiantly, collapsing the distance between herself and Emma. As their embrace bridged the darkness, a sudden pulse of warmth shot through the air, and the chapel shook around them. Mom! Emma cried, as they tumbled into each other, light consuming them in a cocoon of comfort. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter, tears streaming down her face, the weight of loss lifting, replaced with something sacred: belonging, love, and fierce protection. And just like that, the shadows shrank back in a dying wail, retreating into nothingness as they were swallowed by the dawn breaking outside. The chapel was now bathed in warm, golden light flooding through the cracks, a new day rising over the remnants of the night's horrors. They stood, trembling yet whole, as the sun rolled into view. The pain of loss and the threat of despair faded into the soft whisper of morning, as the chaos gave way to a serene calm. Sarah held Emma tight, never letting go. "Are we safe now?" Emma asked, eyes wide with wonder. Sarah brushed a finger across her daughter's cheek. "Yes. We're home." Together, they stepped into the golden glow, leaving the horrors behind. Mark joined them, wrapping them both in a cocoon of warmth and safety. They would rebuild, they would heal, but they knew, they had faced darkness together and emerged with an unyielding bond that no shadow could ever sever. The village, a memory behind them, whispered promises of safety to come, their laughter ringing like a distant echo, fading as the light enveloped them fully, but it was the promise of tomorrow that shone brightest in Sarah's heart. They emerged, united, unbreakable, ready to embrace their new life together, and as they continued onward, a deep whisper curled through the air, soft yet sinister. "The balance, it is never truly restored." But for now, they were freed. If you found this story gripping, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling conclusion. Your support makes a difference, and only true fans understand the importance of helping this community grow.